RoRos, roll-on roll-off general cargo, container, vehicle and car carriers, first entered commercial service in the 1960s. Able to carry a wide range of goods and offer much faster turnaround times in port, the RoRo design was quickly adopted by many major shipping lines. They range from large ocean-going vessels to small coastal ships. Today, RoRos have an important role in the world's merchant fleet. Over the years, they have established a remarkably good safety record, even though their architecture is radically different from conventional freighters. So, however many times you have worked on RoRos, it is essential that you understand the design of this class of vessel. Traditional cargo carriers are built with a series of vertical, watertight compartments. In case of damage to the hull, water can only enter a small section of the ship. Even if more than one hold is affected, the stability and buoyancy of the vessel may still be maintained. In the design of RoRos, the compartments are turned through 90 degrees to form horizontal decks. Loading and discharge no longer rely purely on overhead dockside cranes. Instead, a built-in cargo ramp that can be raised and lowered forms a bridge between ship and shore. Entry is now through a large access door, let into the hull. Usually, it is located in the stern, but it can be in the bow or the side. Internally, hydraulically operated ramps, cargo hoists or elevators connect each deck. So this cargo door provides direct access to all areas of the vessel. Such flexibility has given RoRos certain advantages. As well as a weather deck for carrying standard containers, they can transport large, awkward, and difficult to secure cargoes. Palletized goods like paper and steel girders, and high-value shipments like motor vehicles. These benefits were made possible by a fundamental change in ship design. But this also introduced new safety issues. For all ships, whatever their class, safety depends on watertight integrity. Because the structure of a RoRo differs from a traditional freighter, maintaining the stability and safety of a RoRo requires additional measures and procedures. The horizontal decks provide a large, flexible cargo space. However, if the ship's side is penetrated, if sufficient quantities of water flow into the vessel, then there is a real danger that a RoRo will be gravely destabilized. Severe flooding of one or more of the decks will cause the vessel to list. With such a vast open area, the water can move freely. It will move toward the lowest point, and this results in even greater listing. The ship's stability is rapidly affected, and, if not corrected, the vessel could founder. To minimize the risks, it is a class requirement that all RoRos are subdivided into areas of containment, or zones. These zones often correspond to the individual horizontal decks. For containment to succeed, it is vital that each zone can be completely isolated from its neighbours. This serves three purposes. It acts as a safeguard, confining the problem to one area. That makes it easier to take the appropriate action. In the case of flooding, pumping can reduce the volume, while fire can be doused with water or carbon dioxide. Finally, preservation. If the hull is damaged and the vessel is taking on water, then by sealing the decks, the trapped air will act as a cushion, helping the ship remain afloat. Containment and watertight integrity are closely linked. Under no circumstances should they ever be compromised. In the day-to-day operation, watertight integrity is maintained by ramp covers, doors, seals, and dampers. When closed, the external cargo door is a structural part of the hull. Even though it is mounted well above the waterline, any failure could prove catastrophic. Hydraulic pressure will pull the door shut, but that alone is not enough to guarantee watertight integrity. So, in addition, most modern designs rely on tongue and groove compression lips lined with rubber. Engineered to fit together perfectly, the seal is created by closing the door firmly into place with cleats and locking bolts. Although it is usual to check visually that the cargo door is properly closed, there is often remote electronic monitoring on the bridge as well. It is a requirement to keep internal ramps closed when at sea, even on very short crossings. They too are made watertight by hydraulically locked tongue and groove compression seals. In RoRo vessels, ventilation shafts allow air to circulate through individual decks and compartments. But where air can get in, so can water. If the dampers are not closed, then in stormy conditions, water could enter the hold and spread throughout the decks, compromising the ship's stability. Ventilation dampers must be both watertight and mechanically operational. Manual locking devices, dogs, are frequently used as an additional safety feature. Closing and dogging down provides an extra degree of security in bad weather. The design of a RoRo is inherently safe. But if the proper operational standards are not maintained, then the ship's watertight integrity, its stability and its seaworthiness could all be jeopardized. Your life and the lives of your fellow crew members depends on following established procedures and reporting any problems, however minor, to a senior officer without delay. There are many practical measures that ensure safety on board. Doing your job properly and following the correct procedures is vital, because maintaining watertight integrity is the responsibility of every crew member. Before any cargo handling procedures begin, it is usually the responsibility of the chief officer to organize an inspection of each deck and cargo space. This includes checking and clearing all intermediate deck drain pipes, cleaning bilge pump filters, and testing the pumps. Seaworthiness depends on the state of repair of the vessel. If there is damage to the ship, or a piece of equipment does not function properly, then it is your duty to report it immediately to the officer in charge. He will ensure that the problem is logged and scheduled for repair or replacement. It is good practice to clean cargo holds continuously during loading and especially during discharging. Keep unused packing materials and dunnage secured or stowed in bins. Waste paper, discarded packing and rags present a real danger. Any water will wash this rubbish into the bilge suction wells. A blockage here will reduce pump efficiency and may even stop them working. If rags are used with car lashings, then it is important that surplus and loose rags are collected and safely stowed before sailing. Loading and unloading cargo presents special risks. Often it is carried out at speed and can involve workers who may not be familiar with the ship's layout. The forks of a forklift truck are particularly dangerous. They can damage the ventilation system, control panels, electrical cables, hydraulic piping, and doors to escape trunks. Even the slightest mark or dent on a hydraulic piston can prevent doors and ramps opening or closing. Compression bars can be damaged by heavy machinery or even forklifts. In such cases, they compromise the effectiveness of the seal, making it impossible to create a watertight closure. With pallets, bolsters and Maffei trailers becoming ever larger and heavier, careful handling of loads is essential. Each item of cargo is stowed according to a predefined plan. The chosen position will take account of the weight, size and destination. The aim is to make the best use of the deck space without compromising safety or exceeding the maximum permissible deck loading. Large items can block the view, and an unlocked door could go unnoticed. So, before loading very large pallets, especially ones placed close to watertight doors, the officer of the watch must ensure that all sea doors and escape trunk doors are securely closed and dogged down beforehand. Once in place, the cargo is securely lashed down. It's important the cargo cannot move, especially in heavy seas. Otherwise, when the ship rolls, it may shift and adversely affect the stability of the vessel. Even worse, if cargo came adrift, it could puncture the ship's hull. There are times when RoRos will carry hazardous materials. At such times, the IMDG code should be strictly followed. Make a reference to the appropriate pages of the Group Emergency Schedule and MFAG. If an accident does happen, then you can save precious time by having the right information available immediately. RoRos often carry containerized cargoes on the weather deck. These will also be loaded according to a plan. It is vital that the water mains are accessible and weather deck escape doors and hatches are not blocked. They are an essential means of escape from the lower decks and, in an emergency, could make the difference between life and death. Before leaving port, the ship is prepared for sea. Freight access to the weather deck is often through a guillotine door. Here, a large, vertically operated door is opened hydraulically and, usually, locked in place by wedges. When closing it, raise the door a little to check there is sufficient hydraulic pressure. Otherwise, if the wedges are simply removed, then the door will crash down. The weather deck door is vital for watertight integrity. So, any damage will delay the ship for days, or in serious cases, for weeks. As each door, ramp hatch and damper is closed and dogged down. It is good practice to log it in writing. The last door to be shut is the exterior cargo door. Where mechanical safety bolts are fitted, these are engaged to create a totally watertight seal. One of the principal features of a roll-on roll-off vessel is the external access ramp. As ships get bigger and bigger, this ramp becomes ever more complex. Its reliability is essential to the vessel's operations. The external access ramp should never be raised or lowered without first checking that the area is clear of personnel and obstructions. In some ships, this ramp can weigh more than 450 tons and is a major hazard if operated incorrectly. Like all other specialized equipment, ramp movement must only be undertaken by a qualified person authorized by the master. When at sea, it is a standard rule that any hatch or door that need not be opened is kept closed. On every voyage, there is a continuous program of routine maintenance. Often, this requires that hatches are left open. But at meal breaks and at the end of the day, or if heavy seas are expected, then they must be closed. Painting is an ongoing process. Whilst it protects the ship, some things must never be painted. For instance, the rubber packing on watertight doors and hatches is attacked by paint, and this will destroy the watertight integrity of the seal. Paint will also clog the screw threads of dogs, preventing the door, hatch or damper from closing correctly. Remember that watertight integrity is vital if the ship is to be safe. Your life and the lives of your fellow crew members depends on following established procedures and reporting any problems, however minor, to a senior officer without delay. The role of officers in managing watertight integrity is a vital one. RoRos are a specialized class of vessel, designed to exacting standards. Because of this, they are far more demanding than conventional freighters. In traditional ships with vertical compartments, damage to one compartment is seldom life-threatening. The hold can be sealed off, preventing the water from flooding the rest of the ship. In RoRos, the situation is very different. The horizontal decks usually run the entire length and breadth of the vessel. So, a breakdown in watertight integrity is far more serious. As water enters, it flows to the lowest point, causing the ship to list to that side. It is the free surface effect that is especially dangerous. It shifts the vessel's centre of gravity and dramatically changes the ship's stability. Attempting to correct the list by filling the ballast tanks on the high side may have disastrous consequences. Initially, ballasting the high side will correct the list. As the ship levels off, the free water will spread out, flowing towards the lowest point. And there is a grave risk it will induce a list on the other side. Now, the weight of free water is added to the weight of the ballasted tanks. Such is the force that the cargo may break free and shift too, thereby compounding the problem. When substantial amounts of water flood into a RoRo, it can founder within a very short space of time, with the real possibility of loss of life. An ingress of water can happen in two ways. From internal damage, sometimes caused by the movement of cargo. This might include punctured tanks or burst pipes. Secondly, from a collision that causes a penetration of the hull. The pumps may hold the vessel, but it is equally important to control and reduce the ingress of water. Turning the ship relative to the prevailing wind and waves may help to reduce or counter the ingress of water. If the water is flooding the upper decks, it might be advisable to drain it to the lower decks, if this will increase the ship's stability. Monitor the status of fuel and ballast tanks. If they are not completely full, then try to bring as many of them as possible to 98% capacity or more. Whatever action is taken, the aim is to stabilize the vessel and, if possible, bring her onto an even keel. In the case of penetration of the hull, it could be desirable to stabilize the ship with a list to the opposite side from the damage. In RoRos, watertight integrity is an essential part of vessel and contingency planning. Because the ingress of water presents an enormous potential danger, it is vital that senior officers understand and develop strategies for dealing with such an emergency. These scenarios might include penetration of the hull, the impact of flooding on stability, and double bottom damage. The watertight integrity of a RoRo depends on many factors.
Let's go forward, dog.
But it is most important that the condition of the ship meets the standards laid down for seaworthiness. And that all crew members follow the correct procedures for operating the vessel. RoRos have an enviable safety record. This record has been maintained through the professionalism and the skills of roll-on, roll-off officers and ratings. Watertight integrity is the responsibility of everyone. Remember, your life and the lives of your fellow crew members depends on it.